Isaac Newton's introductory Chronicle, From the First Memory of Things in Europe to the Conquest of Persia by Alexander the Great. All dates, times are set down in years BC. Let us begin. The Canaanites who fled from Joshua retired in great numbers into Egypt, and there conquered Timaus, Thamos, or Thamuz, king of Lower Egypt, and reigned there under the kings Salatus, Boyon, Apknas, Apophis, Janius, Assis, and others, until the days of Eli and Samuel. They fed on flesh and sacrificed men after the manner of the Phoenicians, and were called shepherds, or Hyksos, by the Egyptians, who lived only on the fruits of the earth and abominated flesh-eaters. The upper parts of Egypt were in those days under many kings, reigning at Coptos, Thebes, Thys, Elephantis, and other places, which, by conquering one another, grew by degrees into one kingdom, over which Mithraghmuktosis reigned in the days of Eli. In the year before Christ, 1125, Mefres reigned over the Upper Egypt, from Syene to Heliopolis, and his successor, Mithraghmuktosis, made a lasting war upon the shepherds soon after, and caused many of them to fly into Palestine, Idumea, Syria, and Libya. And under Lelex, Azaius, Inachus, Pelasgus, Iolus I, Cecrops, and other captains fled into Greece. Before those days, Greece and all Europe were peopled by wandering Cimmerians and Scythians from the backside of the Euxine Sea, who lived a rambling, wild sort of life, like the Tartars in the northern parts of Asia. Of their race was Ogyges, in whose days these Egyptian strangers came into Greece. The rest of the shepherds were shut up by Mithraghmuktosis in a part of the Lower Egypt called Abaris, or Pelusium. In the year 1100, the Philistines, strengthened by the access of the shepherds, conquered Israel and take the ark. Samuel judges Israel. In 1185, Haemon, the son of Pelasgus, reigns in Thessaly. In 1180, Lycaon, the son of Pelasgus, builds Lycosura. Pharoneus, the son of Inachus, Pharonicum, afterwards called Argos. Aegialeus, the brother of Pharoneus and the son of Inachus, Aegialmeum, afterwards called Sicyon, and these were the oldest towns in Peloponnesia. Till then they built on only single houses scattered up and down about the fields. About the same time Cecrops built Cecropia in Attica, afterwards called Athens, and Eleusine, the son of Ogyges, built Eleusis. And these towns gave a beginning to the kingdoms of the Arcadians, Argives, Sicyons, Athenians, Eleusinians, and others. Deucalion flourishes. In 1170 BC, Amosis, or Thutmosis, the successor of Mithraghmuktosis, abolishes the Phoenician custom in Heliopolis of sacrificing men, and drives the shepherds out of Abaris. By their access, the Philistines become so numerous as to bring into the field against Saul 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, and people as the land on the seashore for multitude. Abas, the father of Acrisius and Protus, comes into Egypt. In 1069, Saul is made king of Israel, and by the hand of Jonathan gets a great victory over the Philistines. Erotus, the son of Lelex, and Lacedaemon, who married Sparta, the daughter of Erotus, reign in Laconia, and they build Sparta. In 1060, Samuel dies. In 1059, David is made king. In 1048, the Edomites are conquered and dispersed by David, and some of them fly into Egypt with their young king Hadad. Others fly to the Persian Gulf with their commander Owanes, and others from the Red Sea to the coast of the Mediterranean, and they fortify Azoth against David, and take Zidon. And the Zidonians who fled from them build Tyre and Aradus, and make Abibalus the king of Tyre. These Edomites carry to all places their arts and sciences, amongst which were their navigation, astronomy, and letters. For in Idumea they had constellations and letters before the days of Job, who mentions them, and there Moses learned to write the law in a book. These Edomites who fled to the Mediterranean, translating the word Erythrea into that of Phoenicia, give the name of Phoenicians to themselves, and that of Phoenicia to all of the seacoasts of Palestine from Azoth to Zidon. And hence came the tradition of the Persians and of the Phoenicians themselves mentioned by Herodotus, that the Phoenicians came originally from the Red Sea and presently undertook long voyages on the Mediterranean. In 1047, Acrisius marries Eurydice, the daughter of Lacedaemon in Sparta. The Phoenician magnates who fled from the Red Sea, mariners who fled from the Red Sea, being used to long voyages for the sake of traffic, begin like voyages on the Mediterranean from Zidon, and sailing as far as Greece, carrying away Io, the daughter of Inachus, who, with other Grecian women, came to their ships to buy their merchandise. The Greek seas begin to be infested with pirates. 1046, the Syrians of Zobah and Damascus are conquered by David. Nictimus, the son of Lycaon, reigns in Arcadia. Deucalion is still alive. 1045, many of the Phoenicians and Syrians, fleeing from Zidon and from David, come under the conduct of Cadmus, Cilix, Phoenix, Membliarius, Nycteus, Thasus, Atimnus, and other captains, into Asia Minor, Crete, Greece, and Libya. And they introduce letters, music, poetry, the octairis, metals, and their fabrication and other arts, sciences, and customs of the Phoenicians. At this time, Craneus, the successor of Cecrops, reigned in Attica, and in his reign, in the beginning of the reign of Nycteus, the Greeks placed the flood of Deucalion. This flood was succeeded by 4 ages or generations of men, in the first of which Chiron, the son of Saturn and Philyra, was born, and the last of which, according to Hesiod, ended with the Trojan War, and so places the destruction of Troy 4 generations, or about 140 years later than the flood, and the coming of Cadmus, reckoning with the ancients 3 generations to about 100 years. With these Phoenicians came a sort of men skilled in the religious mysteries, arts, and sciences of Phoenicia, and they settled in several places under the names Curetes, Corybantes, Telchines, and Idaiai Dactyli. 1043, Helen, the son of Deucalion and father of Aeolus, Xuthus, and Doris, flourishes. 1035, Erechtheus reigns in Attica. Aethlius, the grandson of Deucalion and the father of Endymion, builds Elis. The Idai Dactyli find out iron in Mount Ida in Crete, and they work it into armor and iron tools, and thereby give a beginning to the trades of smiths and armorers in Europe. And by singing and dancing in their armor, and keeping time by striking upon one another's armor with their swords, they bring in music and poetry. And at the same time they nurse up the Cretan Jupiter in a cave of the same mountain, dancing about him in their armor. 1034, Ammon reigns in Egypt. He conquered Libya and reduced that people from a wandering savage life to a civil one, and taught them to lay up the fruits of the earth, and from him Libya and the desert above it were anciently called Ammonia. He was the first that built long and tall ships with sails, and had a fleet of such ships on the Red Sea, and another on the Mediterranean at Irasa in Libya. Till then they used small and round vessels of burden invented on the Red Sea, and kept within sight of the shore, for enabling them to cross the seas without seeing the shore. The Egyptians began in his days to observe the stars. And from this beginning astronomy and sailing had their rise. Hitherto the lunisolar year had been in use, but this year being of an uncertain length, and so unfit for astronomy, in his days and in the days of his sons and grandsons, by observing the heliacal risings and settings of the stars, they found the length of the solar year, and made it consist of 5 days more than the 12 calendar months on the old lunisolar year. Creusa, the daughter of Erechtheus, marries Xuthus, the son of Helen. Erechtheus, having first celebrated the Panathenai, joins horses to a chariot. Aegina, the daughter of Asopus and mother of Iacchus, is born. In 1030, Ceres, a woman of Sicily, in seeking her daughter who was stolen, comes into Attica, and there teaches the Greeks to sow corn, for which benefaction she was deified after her death. She first taught the art to Triptolemus, the young son of Celeus, king of Eleusis. In 1028, Oinotrus, the youngest son of Lycaon, the Janus of the Latins, led the first colony of Greeks into Italy, and there taught them to build houses. Perseus was born. In 1020, Arcas, the son of Callisto and the grandson of Lycaon, and Eumelus, the first king of Achaea, receive bread corn from Triptolemus. In 1090, Solomon reigns and marries the daughter of Ammon, and by means of this affinity is supplied with horses from Egypt. And his merchants also bring horses from thence for all the kings of the Hittites and Syrians. For horses came originally from Libya, and thence Neptune was called Equestris. Tantalus, king of Phrygia, steals Ganymede, the son of Troas, king of Troas. In 1017, Solomon, by the assistance of the Tyrians and Arcadians, who had mariners among them acquainted with the Red Sea, sets out a fleet upon that sea. Those assistants build new cities in the Persian Gulf, called Tyre and Aradus. In 1015, the Temple of Solomon is founded. Minos reigns in Crete, expelling his father Asterius, who flees into Italy and becomes the Saturn of the Latins. Ammon takes Gezer from the Canaanites and gives it to his daughter, Solomon's wife. In 1014, Ammon places Cepheus at Joppa. In 1010, Sesac, in the reign of his father Ammon, invades Arabia Felix, and sets up pillars at the mouth of the Red Sea. Apus, Epaphus, or Epopeus, the son of Pheronius, and Nycteus, king of Boeotia, is slain. Lycus inherits the kingdom of his brother Nycteus. Aetolus, the son of Endymion, flies into the country of the Curetes in Achaia, and calls it Aetolia, and of Prodoi, the daughter of Phorbus, beget Plerun and Calydon, who built cities in Aetolia called by their own names. Antiopa, the daughter of Nycteus, is sent home to Lycus by Laomedon, the successor of Apis, and in the way brings forth Amphion and Zethus. In 1008, Sesac, in the reign of his father Ammon, invades Afrique and Spain, and sets up pillars in all of his conquests, and particularly at the mouth of the Mediterranean, and returns home by the coast of Gaul and Italy. In 1007, Ceres, being dead, Eumolpus institutes her mysteries in Eleusine. The mysteries of Rhea are instituted in Phrygia, in the city of Cybele. About this time, temples begin to be built in Greece. Hyagnis, the Phrygian, invents the pipe. After the example of the common council of the 5 lords of the Philistines, the Greeks set up the Amphictyonic Council, first at Thermopylae, by the influence of Amphictyon, the son of Deucalion, and a few years after, at Delphi, by the influence of Acrisius. Among the cities whose deputies met at Thermopylae, I do not find Athens, and therefore doubt whether Amphictyon was king of that city. If he was the son of Deucalion and brother of Helen, he and Cranaeus might reign together in several parts of Attica. But I meet with a later Amphictyon who entertained the great Bacchus. This council worshipped Ceres, and therefore was instituted after her death. In 1006, Minos prepares a fleet, clears the Greek seas of pirates, and sends colonies to the islands of the Greeks, some of which were not inhabited before. Cecrops II reigns in Attica. Caucon teaches the mysteries of Ceres and Messene. In 1005, Andromeda is carried away from Joppa by Perseus. Pandion, the brother of Cecrops II, reigns in Attica. Car, the son of Pheronius, builds a temple to Ceres. In 1002, Sesac reigns in Egypt and adorns Thebes, dedicating it to his father Ammon by the name of Noammon, or Ammon-no. That is, the people or city of Ammon, whence the Greeks called it Diospolis, the city of Jupiter. Sesac also erected temples and oracles to his father in Thebes, Ammonia, and Ethiopia, and thereby caused his father to be worshipped as a god in those countries, and I think also in Arabia Felix, and this was the original of the worship of Jupiter Ammon, and the first mention of oracles that I meet with in profane history. War between Randion and Labdacus, the grandson of Cadmus. In 994, Aegeus reigns in Attica. In 993, Pelops, the son of Tantalus, comes into Peloponnesus, marries Hippodamia, the granddaughter of Acrisius, takes Aetolia from Aetolus, the son of Endymion, and by his riches grows potent. In 990, Amphion and Zethus slay Lycus, put Laius, the son of Labdacus, to flight, and reign in Thebes, and wall the city about. In 989, Daedalus and his nephew Talos invent the saw, the turning lathe, the wimble, chimpax, and other instruments of carpenters and joiners, and thereby give a beginning to those arts in Europe. Daedalus also invented the making of statues with their feet asunder, as if they walked. In 988, Minos makes war upon the Athenians for killing his son Androgeus. Iacchus flourishes. In 987, Daedalus kills his nephew Talos and flees to Minos. A priestess of Jupiter Ammon, being brought by Phoenician merchants into Greece, sets up the oracle of Jupiter at Dodona. This gives a beginning to oracles then in Greece, and by their dictates the worship of the dead is everywhere introduced. In 983, Sisyphus, the son of Aeolus, the grandson of Helen, reigns in Corinth, and some say that he built that city. In 980, Laius recovers the kingdom of Thebes. Athamas, the brother of Sisyphus and father of Phrixus and Hele, marries Ino, the daughter of Cadmus. In 979, Rehoboam reigns. Thoas is sent from Crete to Lemnos. He reigns there in the city Hephaestia, and works in copper and iron. In 978, Alcema, born of Electrio, the son of Perseus and Andromeda, and of Leucidice, the daughter of Pelops. In 974, Sesac spoils the temple and invades Syria and Persia, setting up pillars in many places. Jeroboam, becoming subject to Sesac, sets up the worship of the Egyptian gods in Israel. 971, Sesac invades India and returns with triumph the next year, but won, whence Triatericabaki. He sets up pillars on 2 mountains at the mouth of the river Ganges. 968, Theseus reigns, having overcome the Minotaur, and soon after unites the 12 cities of Attica under one government. Sesac, having carried on his victories to Mount Caucasus, leaves his nephew Prometheus there, and Aeetes in Colchis. 967, Sesac, passing over the Hellespont, conquers Thrace, kills Lycurgus, king thereof, and gives his kingdom and one of his singing women to Oeagrus, the father of Orpheus. Sesac had in his army Ethiopians commanded by Pan, and Libyan women commanded by Myrina or Minerva. It was the custom of the Ethiopians to dance when they were entering into battle, and from their skipping they were painted with goats' feet in the form of satyrs. 966, Thoas, being made king of Cyprus by Sesac, goes thither with his wife Callicopis, and leaves his daughter Hippisipile in Lemnos. In 965, Sesak is baffled by the Greeks and Scythians, loses many of his women with their queen, Minerva, composes the war, and is received by Amphictyon at a feast, buries Ariadne, goes back through Asia and Syria into Egypt with innumerable captives, among whom was Tithonus, the son of Laomedon, the king of Troy, and leaves his Libyan Amazons under Marthesia and Lampeto, the successors of Minerva, at the river Thermodon. He left also in Colchos geographical tables of all of his conquests, and thence geography had its rise. His singing women were celebrated in Thrace by the name of the Muses, and the daughters of Pierus, a Thracian, imitating them, were celebrated by the same name. In 964, Minos, making war upon Cocalus, king of Sicily, is slain there by him. He was eminent for his dominion, his laws, and his justice. Upon his sepulchre, visited by Pythagoras, was this inscription, To Dios, the sepulchre of Jupiter. Danaus, with his daughters flying from his brother Aegyptus, that is, from Sesak, comes into Greece. Sesak, using the advice of his secretary Thoth, distributes Egypt into 36 nomes, and in every nome erects a temple that appoints the several gods, festivals, and religions of the several nomes. The temples were the sepulchres of his great men, where they were to be buried and worshipped after death, each in his own temple, with ceremonies and festivals appointed by him, while he and his queen, by the names of Osiris and Isis, were to be worshipped in all of Egypt. These were the temples seen and described by Lucian 1100 years after to be one and of the same age, and this was the original out of several nomes of Egypt and of the several gods and several religions of those nomes. Sesak divided also the land of Egypt by measure amongst his soldiers, and thence geometry had its rise. Hercules and Eurystheus are born. In 963, Amphictyon brings the 12 gods of Egypt into Greece, and these are the Di Magni Majorum Gentium, to whom the earth and planets and elements are dedicated. In 962, Phrixus and Helle fly from their stepmother Ino, the daughter of Cadmus. Helle is drowned in the Hellespont, so named from her, but Phrixus arrived at Colchos. 960, the war between the Lapitae and the people of Thessaly, called Centaurus. In 958, Oedipus kills his father Laius. Sthenelus, the son of Perseus, reigns in Mycene. In 956, Sesak is slain by his brother Iapetus, who after death was deified in Afric by the name of Neptune, and called Typhon by the Egyptians. Horus reigns and routs the Libyans, who, under the conduct of Iapetus and his son Antaeus, or Atlas, invaded Egypt. Sesak, from his making river Nile useful by cutting channels from it to all the cities of Egypt, was called by its names Sihor, or Siris, Nilus, and Aegyptus. The Greeks, hearing the Egyptians lament Osiris and Busiris, called him Osiris and Busiris. The Arabians, from his great acts, called him Bacchus, that is, the Great. The Phrygians called him Mators, or Mawurs, the Valiant, and by contraction, Mars. Because he set up pillars in all of his conquests, and his army in his father's reign fought against the Africans with clubs, he is painted with pillars and a club. And this is that Hercules, who, according to Cicero, was born upon the Nile, and according to Eudoxus was slain by Typhon, and according to Diodorus was an Egyptian, and went over a great part of the world, and set up the pillars in Africa. He seems to be also the Belus, who, according to Diodorus, led a colony of Egyptians to Babylon, and there instituted priests called Chaldeans, who were free from taxes and observed the stars, as in Egypt. Hitherto Judah and Israel labored under great vexations, but henceforward Asa, king of Judah, had peace 10 years. In 947, the Ethiopians invade Egypt and drown Horus in the Nile. Thereupon Bubaste, the sister of Horus, kills herself by falling from the top of a house, and their mother Isis, or Astraea, goes mad, and thus ended the reign of the gods of Egypt. 946. Zerah, the Ethiopian, is overthrown by Asa. The people of the Lower Egypt make Osarsifus their king, and call in 200,000 Jews and Phoenicians against the Ethiopians. Menes, or Amenophis, the young son of Zerah, and Sisya reigns. 944. The Ethiopians, under Amenophis, retire from the Lower Egypt and fortify Memphis against Osarsifus. And by these wars and the Argonautic expedition, the great empire of Egypt breaks into pieces. Eurystheus, the son of Sthenelus, reigns in Mycene. 943. Evander and his mother Carmenta carry letters into Italy. 942. Orpheus deifies the son of Samael by the name of Bacchus, and appoints his ceremonies. 940. The great men of Greece, hearing the civil wars and distractions of Egypt, resolve to send an embassy to the nations upon the Euxine and Mediterranean seas, subject to that empire, and for that end order the building of the ship Argo. 939. The ship Argo is built after the pattern of the longship in which Danaus came into Greece, and this was the first long ship built by the Greeks. Chiron, who was born in the Golden Age, forms the constellations for the use of the Argonauts, and places the celestial and equinoctial points in the 15 degrees or middles of the constellations of Cancer, Cali, Capricorn, and Aries. Meton, in the year of Nabonassar, 316, observed the summer solstice in the 8th degree of Cancer, and therefore the solstice had then gone back 7 degrees. It goes back 1 degree in about 72 years, and 7 degrees in about 504. Count these years back from the year of Nabonassar, 316, and they will place the Argonautic expedition about 936 years before Christ. Gingris, the son of Thoas, is slain, and deified by the name of Adonis. In 938, Theseus, being 50 years old, steals Helena, then 7. Pirithous, the son of Ixion, endeavoring to steal Persephone, the daughter of Orcus, king of the Molossians, is slain by the dog of Orcus, and his companion, Theseus, is taken and imprisoned. Helena is set at liberty by her brothers. 937. The Argonautic expedition. Prometheus leaves Mount Caucasus, being set at liberty by Hercules. Laomedon, king of Troy, is slain by Hercules. Priam succeeds him. Talus, a brazen man of the Brazen Age, the son of Minos, is slain by the Argonauts. Aesculapius and Hercules were Argonauts, and Hippocrates was the 18th from Aesculapius by the father's side, and the 19th from Hercules by the mother's side. And because these generations, being noted in history, were most probably by the chief of the family, and for the most part by the eldest sons, we may reckon 28, or at the most 30 years to a generation, and thus the 17 intervals by the father's side and 18 by the mother's will at a middle reckoning amount to about 507 years, which, being counted backwards from the beginning of the Peloponnesian War, at which time Hippocrates began to flourish, we'll reach up to the time we have placed the Argonautic expedition. 936. Theseus is set at liberty by Hercules. In 934, the hunting of the Caledonian boar, slain by Meleager. In 930, Amenophis, with an army out of Ethiopia and Thebais, invades the Lower Egypt, conquers Osarsifus, and drives out the Jews and Canaanites, and this is reckoned the second expulsion of the shepherds. Calicubus dies, and is deified by Thoas, with temples at Paphos and Amathus in Cyprus, and at Byblus in Syria, and with priests and sacred rites, and becomes the Venus of the ancients, and the Dea Cypria, and Dea Syria. And from these and other places where temples were erected to her, she was also called Pamphia, Amatusia, Biblia, Cythereia, Salamania, Cnidia, Erykia, Idalia, and others. And her 3 waiting women became the 3 Graces. 928, the War of the 7 Captains against Thebes. 927, Hercules and Aesculapius are deified. Erytheus drives the Heraclides out of the Peloponnesus. He is slain by Hyllus, the son of Hercules. Atreus, the son of Pelops, succeeds him in the kingdom of the Mycenes. Menestheus, the great-grandson of Erechtheus, reigns at Athens. 925, Theseus is slain, being cast down from a rock. 924, Hyllus, invading Peloponnesus, is slain by Echimus. In 919, Atreus dies. Agamemnon reigns. In the absence of Menelaus, who went back to look after what his father Atreus had left to him, Paris steals Helen. 918, the second war against Thebes. 912, Thoas, king of Cyprus and part of Phoenicia, dies, and for making armor for the kings of Egypt was deified with a sumptuous temple at Memphis by the name of Baal Canaan, Vulcan. This temple was said to be built by Menes. This temple was said to be built by Menes, the first king of Egypt, who reigned next after the gods, that is, by Menoth, or Amenophis, who reigned next after the death of Osiris, Isis, Horus, Bubaste, and Thoth. The temple Memphis was also said to be built by Menes, and he began to build it when he fortified it against Osarsiphus. And from him it was called Menoth, Moth, Noth, and others. It is to this day called Menuf by the Arabians. And therefore Menes, who built the city and temple, was Menoth, or Amenophis. The priests of Egypt at length made this temple above 1,000 years older than Amenophis, and some of them 5 or 10,000 years older. But it could not be above 200 or 300 years older than the reign of king of Psammaticus, who finished it, and died 614 years before Christ. When Menoph or Menes built the city, he built a bridge over the Nile, a work too great to be older than the monarchy of Egypt. In 909, Amenophis, called Memnon by the Greeks, built the Memnonia at Susa, whilst Egypt was under the government of Proteus, his viceroy. In 904, Troy is taken. Amenophis was still at Susa, the Greeks feigning that he came from thence to the Trojan War. 903, Damophoon, the son of Theseus by Phoedra, the daughter of Minos, reigns at Athens. 901, Amenophis builds small pyramids in Kokome. In 896, Ulysses leaves Calypso in the island Ogygie. Perhaps this was Cadiz or Calais. She was the daughter of Atlas, according to Homer. But ancients at length feigned that this island, which from Atlas they called Atlantis, had been as big as all of Europe, Africa, and Asia, but was sunk into the sea. In 895, Teucer builds Samos in Cyprus. Hadad, or Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, dies, and is deified at Damascus, with a temple and ceremonies. In 887, Amenophis dies, and is succeeded by his son Rameses, or Rampsinitus, who builds the western portico of the temple of Vulcan. The Egyptians dedicated to Osiris, Isis, Horus Senior, Typhon, and Nephtheh, the sister and wife of Typhon, the 5 days added by the Egyptians to the 12 calendar months of the old lunisolar year, and said that they were added when these 5 princes were born. They were therefore added in the reign of Ammon, the father of these 5 princes. But this year was scarce brought into common use before the reign of Amenophis. For in his temple or sepulchre at Abydos they placed a circle of 365 cubits in compass, covered on the upper side with a plate of gold, and divided into 365 equal parts, to represent all the days of the year, every part having the day of the year and the heliacal risings and settings of the stars on that day noted upon it. And this circle remained there till Cambyses spoiled the temples of Egypt. And from this monument I collect that it was Amenophis who established this year, fixing the beginning thereof to one of the 4 cardinal points of the heavens. For had not the beginning thereof been now fixed, the heliacal risings and settings of the stars could not have been placed upon the days thereof. The priests of Egypt, therefore, in the reign of Amenophis, continued to observe the heliacal risings and settings of the stars upon every day. And when by the sun's meridional altitudes they had found the solstices and equinoxes according to the sun's mean motion, his equation being not yet known, they fixed the beginning of the year to the vernal equinox, and in memory thereof erected this monument. Now this year being carried into Chaldea, the Chaldeans began their year of Nabonassar on the same Thoth with the Egyptians, and made of it the same length. And the Thoth of the first year of Nabonassar fell upon the 26th day of February, which was 33 days and 5 hours before the vernal equinox, according to the sun's mean motion. And the Thoth of this year moves backwards 33 days and 5 hours in 137 years, and therefore fell upon the vernal equinox, 137 years before the era of Nabonassar began, that is, 884 years before Christ. And if it began upon the day next after the vernal equinox, it might begin 3 or 4 years earlier, and there we may place the death of this king. The Greeks feigned that he was the son of Tithonus, and therefore he was born after the return of Sesac into Egypt, with Tithonus and other captives, and so might be about 70 or 75 years old at his death. 883, Dido builds Carthage, and the Phoenicians begin presently after to sail as far as to the strait's mouth and beyond. Aeneas was still alive, according to Virgil. In 870, Hesiod flourishes. He hath told us himself that he lived in the age next after the wars of Thebes and Troy, and that this age should end when the men then living grow hoary and dropped into the grave, and therefore it was but of an ordinary length. And Herodotus has told us that Hesiod and Homer were but 400 years older than himself, whence it follows that the destruction of Troy was not older than we have represented it. 860. Moiris reigns in Egypt. He adorned Memphis, and translated the feet of his empire thither from Thebes. There he built the famous labyrinth, and the northern portico of the temple of Vulcan, and dug the great lake called the Lake of Moiris. And upon the bottom of it he built 2 great pyramids of brick, and these things being not mentioned by Homer or Hesiod were unknown to them, and done after their days. Moiris wrote also a book of geometry. 852. Hazael, the successor of Hadad, at Damascus dies and is deified, as was Hadad before, and these gods, together with Arates, the wife of Hadad, were worshipped in their sepulchres or temples, till the days of Josephus the Jew, and the Syrians boasted their antiquity, not knowing, saith Josephus, that they were new. In 844, the Aeolic migration, Boeotia, formerly called Cadmeus, is seized by the Boeotians. In 837, Cheops reigns in Egypt. He built the greatest pyramid for his sepulchre, and forbade the worship of any former kings, intending to have been worshipped himself. In 825, the Heraclides, after 3 generations, or 100 years, reckoned from their former expedition, return into the Peloponnesus. Henceforward to the end of the first Messenian War, reigning 10 kings of Sparta, by one race, and 9 by another, 10 of Mycenae and 9 of Arcadia, which by reckoning, according to the ordinary course of nature, about 20 years to a reign, one reign with another, will take up about 190 years. And the 7 reigns bore in one of the 2 races of the kings of Sparta, and 8 in the other, to the battle of Thermopylae, may take up 150 years more, and so place the return of the Heraclides about 820 years before Christ. In 824, Khephren reigns in Egypt and builds another great pyramid. In 808, Mycerinus reigns there and builds the 3rd great pyramid. He shut up the body of his daughter in a hollow ox, and caused her to be worshipped daily with odors. In 804, the war between the Athenians and Spartans, in which Codrus, king of the Athenians, is slain. 802, Nitocris, the sister of Macarius, succeeds him, and finishes the 3rd great pyramid. 794, the Ionic migration under the conduct of the sons of Codrus. 790, Pul founds the Assyrian Empire. 788, Assuchus reigns in Egypt and builds the eastern portico of the Temple of Vulcan very splendidly, and a large pyramid of brick made of mud dug out of the lake of Moiris. Egypt breaks into several kingdoms. Gnefactus and Bocchorus reign successively in Upper Egypt, Stephanathus, Nekhepsus, and Necos at Sais, Anusis or Amosis at Anisis or Khanes, and Takelotus at Bubaste. 776, Ipitus restores the Olympiads, and from this era the Olympiads are now reckoned. Gnefactus reigns at Memphis. 772, Nekhepsos and Pelesoris invent astrology in Egypt. 760, Semiramis begins to flourish. Sanconiato then writes. 751, Sabacon, the Ethiopian, invades Egypt, now divided into various kingdoms, burns Bokhyrus, slays Necus, and makes Anisis fly. 747, Pul, king of Assyria, dies and is succeeded at Nineveh by Tiglath-Pileser, and at Babylon by Nabonassar. The Egyptians who fled from Sabacon carry their astrology and astronomy to Babylon, and found the era of Nabonassar in Egyptian years. 740, Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, takes Damascus and captivates the Syrians. In 729, Tiglath-Pileser is succeeded by Salmanasar. In 721, Salmanasar, king of Assyria, carries the 10 tribes into captivity. 719, Sennacherib reigns over Assyria. Archias, the son of Euagetus of the flock of Hercules, leads a colony from Corinth into Sicily, and builds Syracuse. 717, Tirkhab reigns in Ethiopia. 714, Sennacherib is put to flight by the Ethiopians and Egyptians with great slaughter. In 711, the Medes revolt from the Assyrians. Sennacherib is slain. Aserchadon succeeds him. This is that Aserchadonpul, or Sardanapalus, the son of Anakinadaraxes, or Sennacherib, who built Tarsus and Anchiale in one day. In 710, Lycurgus brings the poems of Homer out of Asia into Greece. In 708, Lycurgus becomes tutor to Charillus, or Charilaus, the young king of Sparta. Aristotle makes Lycurgus as old as Ipitus, because his name was upon the Olympic disc. But the disc was one of the 5 games, called the Quinquertium, and the Quinquertium was first instituted upon the 18th Olympiad. Socrates and Thucydides made the institutions of Lycurgus about 300 years older than the end of the Peloponnesian War, that is, 705 years before Christ. In 701, Sabacon, after a reign of 50 years, relinquishes Egypt to his son Sevecus, or Sethon, who becomes priest of Vulcan and neglects military affairs. In 698, Manasseh reigns. In 697, the Corinthians begin first of any men to build ships with 3 orders of oars, called triremes. Hitherto the Greeks had used long vessels of 50 oars. In 687, Tirhakah reigns in Egypt. In 681, Esarhaddon invades Babylon. In 673, the Jews conquered by Esarhaddon and Manasseh are carried captive to Babylon. In 671, Esarhaddon invades Egypt. The government of Egypt committed to 12 princes. In 668, the western nations of Syria, Phoenicia, and Egypt revolt from the Assyrians. Esarhaddon dies and is succeeded by Sausdukinus. Masene returns from captivity. In 658, Phraortes reigns in Medea. The Priretes reign in Corinth, expelling their kings. The Corinthians overcome the Colchians at sea in 657, and this was the oldest sea fight. In 655, Psammaticus becomes king of all Egypt by conquering the other 11 kings, with whom he had already reigned 15 years. He reigned about 39 years more. Henceforward the Ionians had access into Egypt, and thence came the Ionian philosophy, astronomy, and geometry. In 652, the First Messenian War begins. It lasted for 20 years. In 647, Charops, the first decennial archon of the Athenians, some of those archons might die before the end of their 10 years, and the remainder of the 10 years be supplied by a new archon. And hence the 7 decennial archons might not take up above 40 or 50 years. Sausdukinus, king of Assyria, dies, and is succeeded by Kinalidon. In 640, Josiah reigns in Judea. In 636, Phraortes, king of the Medes, is slain in a war against the Assyrians. Astyages succeeds him. In 635, the Scythians invade the Medes and Assyrians. In 633, Battus builds Cyrene, where Irasa, the city of Antiochus, had stood. In 627, Rome is built. In 625, Nabopolassar revolts from the king of Assyria and reigns over Babylon. Phalantus leads the Parthians into Italy and builds Tarentum. In 617, Psammaticus dies. Nekhao reigns in Egypt. In 611, Cyaxares reigns over the Medes. In 610, the princes of the Scythians slain in a feast by Cyaxares. In 609, Josiah is slain. Cyaxares and Nebuchadnezzar overthrow Nineveh, and by sharing the Assyrian Empire grow great. In 607, Creon, the first annual archon of the Athenians, the Second Messenian War begins. Cyaxares makes the Scythians retire beyond Colchis and Iberia, and seizes the Assyrian provinces of Armenia, Pontus, and Cappadocia. In 606, Nebuchadnezzar invades Syria and Judea. In 604, Nabopolassar dies, and is succeeded by his son Nebuchadnezzar, who had already reigned 2 years with his father. In 600, Darius the Mede, the son of Cyaxares, is born. In 599, Kyrus is born of Menedane, the sister of Cyaxares, and daughter of Astyages. In 596, Susiana and Elam, conquered by Nebuchadnezzar, Carinus and Perdiccas fly from Phaedon, and found the kingdom of Macedon. Phaedon introduces weights and measures, and the coining of silver money. In 690, Cyaxares makes war upon Aliates, king of Lydia. In 588, the Temple of Solomon is burned by Nebuchadnezzar. The Messenians, being conquered, fly into Sicily, and they build Messania. In 585, in the 6th year of the Lydian War, a total eclipse of the sun, predicted by Thales, May the 28th, puts an end to a battle between the Medes and Lydians, whereupon they make peace and ratify it by a marriage between Darius Medus, the son of Cyaxares, and Ariane, the daughter of Aliates. In 584, Phaedon presides in the 49th Olympiad. But in 580 he is overthrown. 2 men chosen by lot out of the city Elis to preside over the Olympic Games. In 572, Draco is archon of the Athenians and makes laws for them. In 568, the Amphictyons make war upon the Syrcanians by the advice of Solon and take Syra. Clisthenes, Alcmaeon, Heraclitus commanded the forces of the Amphictyons, and were contemporary to Phaedon. For Leucides, the son of Phaedon, and Megales, the son of Alcmaeon, at one and the same time courted Agarista, the daughter of Clisthenes. In 569, Nebuchadnezzar invades Egypt. Darius the Mede reigns. In 562, Solon, being archon of the Athenians, makes laws for them. In 557, Periander dies, and Corinth becomes free from tyrants. In 555, Nabonidus reigns at Babylon. His mother, Nitocris, adorns and fortifies that city. In 550, Pisistratus becomes tyrant at Athens, a conference between Croesus and Solon. In 549, Solon dies, Hegesistratus being archon then of Athens. In 544, Sardes is taken by Cyrus. Darius the Mede recoins the Lydian money into derics. In 538, Babylon is taken by Cyrus. In 536, Cyrus overcomes Darius the Mede and translates the empire to the Persians. The Jews returned from their captivity and found the Second Temple. In 521, Darius, the son of Hystapes, reigns. The Magi are slain. The various religions of the several nations of Persia, which constituted in the worship of their ancient kings, are abolished, and by the influence of Hystapes and Zoroaster, the worship of one god, at altars without temples, is set up over all of Persia. In 520, the Second Temple is built at Jerusalem by the command of Darius. In 515, the Second Temple is finished and dedicated. In 513, Harmodius and Aristogiton slay Hipparchus, the son of Pisistratus, tyrant of the Athenians. In 508, the kings of the Romans are expelled and consuls erected. In 491, the Battle of Marathon. In 485, Xerxes reigns. In 480, the passage of Xerxes over the Hellespont into Greece, and the battles of Thermopylae and Salamis. In 464, Artaxerxes Longimanus reigns. In 457, Ezra returns into Judea. Johanan, the father of Yadua, was now grown up, having a chamber in the temple. In 444, Nehemiah returns into Judea. Herodotus writes. In 431, the Peloponnesian War begins. In 428, Nehemiah drives away Manasseh, the brother of Jatua, because he had married Nicaso, the daughter of Sambalat. In 424, Darius Notus reigns. In 422, Sambalat builds a temple in the Mount Gerizim, and makes his son-in-law Manasseh the first high priest thereof. In 412, hitherto the priests and Levites were numbered and written in the Chronicles of the Jews, before the death of Nehemiah, at which time either Johanan or Jaddua was a high priest. And here ends the sacred history of the Jews. In 405, Artaxerxes Memnon reigns, the end of the Peloponnesian War. In 359, Artaxerxes Ochus reigns. In 338, Arocus reigns. In 336, Darius Kodomanos reigns. In 332, the Persian Empire is conquered by Alexander the Great. And in 331, Darius Kodomanos, the last king of Persia, is slain.